This one's so special that I'm dispensing with all the pleasantries. We're going to get a lot of AI fun facts today. Today, we'll unpack Dave's 7,644-word annual predictions treatise, which, by the way, I should note you're a harsh grader, and you gave yourself an 8 out of 10 last year.
I don't make super high risk predictions, right? I'm not the guy out there predicting radical stuff that sounds like it's never going to happen.
They're bold and they're edgy, and you're willing to go back and score your own homework a year later.
And I also think I'm willing to talk about uncomfortable things that sometimes people don't want to talk about.
Yo, it's the future, don't hit the snooze. AI is here giving humans the boost. Team Humans rolling, brains in the game with Dan Turchin. Y'all remember the name. People reign in the mix, no stopping the flow. Better work, better life, yeah, we're ready to go. Robots and humans, a collab, you know. Okay, let's start the show.
Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, depending on where you're listening. Welcome back to a very special episode of AI and the Future of Work. This is episode 374. As always, I'm your host, Dan Turchin, CEO of PeopleRain, the AI platform for IT and HR employee service. This one's so special that I'm dispensing with all the pleasantries. There's no listener mailbag. I know that will make some of you sad, and there's no AI fun fact, but I will say we're going to get a lot of AI fun facts today. Welcome back to the fourth annual edition, our first four-time guest ever. The man, the myth, the human spreadsheet. It is the one and only Dave Kellogg. For those of you who haven't heard Dave before, shame on you. He's a serial tech CMO and CEO, investor who's an EIR at Balderton Capital, advisor and board member, and of course, the author of the very excellent Kellblog. Dave spent decades in the trenches of enterprise software, which is perhaps why he's one of the few people who can both analyze your go-to-market strategy and a Grateful Dead set list with equal zeal. You know him as the SaaS whisperer. I also know him as a friend and the OG Silicon Valley polymath. If you know, you know. Today, we'll unpack Dave's 7,644-word annual predictions treatise, which, by the way, according to Dave's accounting, spanned 16 single-space pages. It includes 166 links, 30 endnotes, and consumed about 65 hours to write. In the past 3 years, this is my math, by the way, Dave's annual predictions posts have increased 88% in length by word count. Dave, if this trend continues by 2030, the annual edition will be roughly the size of a novel. Without further ado, Dave, it's my pleasure to welcome you back to year 4. And gosh, where to start? Let's get started. How about, how have you been?
Yeah.
How are you
Well,
holding
thanks
up?
for having me as a four-time guest. I didn't realize I was your first. Yeah, I'm glad you talked about the links because people don't put inline links and copy as much anymore because the web is dead, right? The web is dying. But I do put a lot of work into the links. So I thoroughly encourage people to press them because they're there for a reason. And I think hypertext is great. I mean, you could spend hours in this thing if you traverse all the links, and there's just enormous amount of content this thing links to.
Two of your predictions that I want to unpack to start with from 2025. First, to those who are uninitiated, go read the post, by the way. Every word's worth it. You'll learn what a DOFR is from the Industrial Revolution. That was just one of the 666 links. But one of your predictions, you scored yourself a hit. We're working for the algo. Unpack that one.
Yep. Yeah. So I just thought that one was a fun one because we all know the Turing test, right? And the Turing test is about us. Basically, could a computer prove to us that it's human, right? Or could it confuse us to think it was human? That was the essence of the Turing test. And I just realized that every time I'm doing a CAPTCHA, I'm doing the exact opposite of the Turing test, right? I'm proving I'm human to a computer rather than a computer proving to me that I am. And if you generalize that, right, it's like, every time I do something to please an algorithm, like credit score, right? Like you change your behavior to optimize your credit score. You're working for the algo, right? Every time, and as a blogger, every time I go change pages to optimize them for SEO or AEO, right? I'm working for the algo. Every time an Amazon driver pees in a bottle, right? He's working for the algo in a sense, right? Every time you have those mouse jiggler programs that jiggle your mouse to prove you're still working from home. So I just think it's funny that we could end up working for the algorithms as opposed to them working for us. So that's why I noted that one.
By the way, I should note you're a harsh grader, and you gave yourself an 8 out of 10 last year. So pat yourself on the back. It's pretty good work.
Yeah, thanks. I don't make, just as you know, I don't make super high risk predictions, right? I'm not the guy out there predicting radical stuff that sounds like it's never going to happen. So I do think it's a little bit built into my formula, but thanks. Yeah, it's good. I try. I don't want to get a 10 and I don't want to get a 2, right? There's other people who are going to write stuff that, like if 2 of these happen, it's amazing. But I'm trying to, largely I'm doing extrapolation, right? I'm just looking at stuff. I'm saying, hey, if we carry this forward, what happens?
For the most part, they're bold and they're edgy, and you're willing to go back and score your own homework a year later. So those are things that I think don't happen often enough.
And I also think I'm willing to talk about uncomfortable things that sometimes people don't want to talk about. So people might know, but maybe a little less interested and willing to talk about them.
So here's one. You scored yourself a partial hit. I could argue it either way. I could certainly give you credit for being a full hit. The death of SaaS. Talk about your thoughts from last year and then maybe where we're at a year later.
Yeah, there were 2 things going on with that one. One, Satya Nadella had just done a interview, I think it was on the BG Squared podcast, where he does this incredibly long technical rant about how SaaS apps are just UIs atop a CRUD database, create, retrieve, update, delete. And I've just been hearing that since forever, right? Because I grew up at database companies. My first job was at Ingress, one of the 4 original relational databases. So we, as database people, thought that apps were literally just a UI on top of a database. It was like, oh, there's nothing there. Somebody just builds a couple of screens, they make a few tables, and then they go sell it as an app. And that is, of course, to vastly underestimate the importance and value of apps, right? But only a database person could do that, right? In some sense, right? Because from where you sit, the app looks trivial because you care about transaction systems and logging and ACID transactions and distributed transactions and backup, right? You care about all the system level stuff. So you think that you literally, this is one of my founders once told a customer this on a sales call and it worked, but he looked at the customers and said, your problem is a homework assignment. Which somehow we won the deal anyway. But literally as a database person, you look at PeopleSoft and go, that's a homework assignment. It's not an app. Or you look at Workday today and go, it's not an app, it's a homework assignment. But a lot of that depends on your perspective, and it also means you don't really understand what apps are. Right? If you think you can whip up, and by the way, this is repeating itself today with all the vibe coding. Oh, we can vibe code Salesforce in a weekend, using Lovable, and therefore I can stop paying Salesforce, $100,000 a year. And that story was also going around. If you remember that Klarna was talking about replacing Salesforce, right? Remember that? So those are the things that provoked this post, and I'm basically saying, look, some of this is true. SaaS is under a lot of pressure today. I think I see SaaS is sick, but it isn't dying. The stocks are down a lot. I think a traditional, like if you're 20 million, low growth, low profit, you got a problem because you're going to have a trouble selling that company today. A few years ago, PE would come along to the rescue and just buy you for a reasonable multiple, right? That was kind of halcyon days. But now, if you don't have a strong AI story, I'm not sure that company's sellable, right? So I think SaaS is sick, but no, I don't think people are going to be ripping out Salesforce and Workday. If you think that people are going to rip out Salesforce and Workday and replace it with vibe-coded apps, you do not understand the apps business and you do not understand enterprise software.
100% agree with you. So let's say your former boss, Mark Benioff, he of Ohana fame, calls you into his office or into a board meeting and says, Dave, what should we do? The markets aren't believing that, we're long-term sustainable. They don't believe in Agentforce. And you could apply that to, Bill McDermott at Salesforce, at ServiceNow, or Carl at Workday. But what do you say if you're hauled in to give advice to that board?
If people aren't believing, if people basically push back at my argument, I think the answer, it's a really good question. I mean, first, I think, and I don't have it handy, but I think Salesforce just signed a $5 billion deal. Is this true with the U.S. Army? I thought I saw something go by. It can't be. Let me just go look. But I literally thought I saw that go by this morning when I was eating breakfast. And I'm like, well, one way to disprove it is just show you're still doing big deals. Yeah. Salesforce recently signed a $5.6 billion 10-year deal with the U.S. Army. right? And by the way, the Army doesn't have a Salesforce, but we'll talk about, maybe they do recruiting, but but in any case, I just think to understand enterprise, like if you believe in customized future of enterprise, then we're talking Palantir land. If you believe in the softwareized, then we're talking Salesforce and Workday land. But I don't even know how to make the argument, Dan, other than like, well, I guess I do. It's not the building the app that kills you, it's the maintenance, right? That's the thing with enterprise software. It costs 10 times as much to maintain as to build. So yeah, you might be able to whip up something that does the core functionality quickly, but you're going to realize you have to maintain it, and you're going to realize you forgot about this, forgot about that, forgot about this, forgot about that, and all that stuff you forgot about is what's already in Salesforce or Workday. I think the other thing I'd say, and this is a very strong belief of mine, is Jeffrey Moore has this concept of context and core, and that you should buy context. If it's not core to your competitive advantage, just buy it. Run the same CRM as everybody else. Run the same HR core system as everybody else. Run the same payroll and accounts payable system as everybody else. Why? Because in the end, it doesn't matter. You want to be automated, you want to be state of the art, but it's not going to determine whether your company is successful or not. That's what core is, right? So people should, as a general best practice, for all the reasons stated, buy context, build core. And so that would be my next level argument.
And a compelling one. I want to shift to a few of the predictions for 2026 that I think are most relevant for this audience. And by the way, you had told me to stay away from politics, so I'm going to sit on my hands and prevent myself from inserting a snarky comment about the U.S. Army buying $5 billion of software from Mark Benioff.
Yeah. Gosh, I wonder why somebody was spending so much time in Washington. Yeah.
So I think we'll move on to 2026. And let's see, I'm going to skip ahead to your fourth prediction. Certainly very relevant for this audience. AI takes jobs, but not as we think. So many interesting examples, and that alone is several hundred words. Unpack that one. What you're thinking there?
Sure. So first, I have to say, I finally now work with a future of work company, right? So I don't know if you know this, but I'm on the board of a company called TechWolf. So because for years I was always interested in it, but I was never really engaged. So like, hey, I'm in the family now. So I do talk about some of these things more and think about them more. They do skills intelligence, mostly their skills platform. But this prediction is about jobs and how they go away. And I think we're all worried about that, right? I have kids, like what's going to happen to them, what's going to happen to their jobs. And I think we all worry at some level, but I'm just, I guess, an optimist, which is we're really good at getting new, interesting jobs and shedding bad ones. And do we really miss, right, pin setters and bowling alleys, switchboard operators, telephone operators, linotype setters, ice men, typists, shorthand secretaries, slubber doffers, sorry. And a doffer is somebody who kind of changed the bobbins in a weaving plant that makes thread or something, or yarn. And by the way, that was also child labor because you needed to have little hands to do it. So like, we don't miss that. Like I have a great aunt who worked at a book bindery in New York when she was like 14. Right? We don't miss these jobs, right? We're better off as a society without those jobs. In the blog, I have a chart of elevator operator employment, which is fun, right? It peaked at 120,000 people, I think, in 1950s. So that was a job, right? I'm sure some of the audience doesn't even know that, but in 1950, if you got in an elevator, there was someone driving it for you, right? So I just think it's the nature of change, and we get afraid of change because it's scary. We get afraid of change because it eliminates jobs. And when it's somebody else's job, it's always easy, right? Oh, you're getting rid of elevator operators. It's okay because I'm a business person, right? But now we're kind of eliminating knowledge workers, and that's a little too close to home for many people, right? And I will say, look, there was one thing we all know the word Luddite, right? Which is somebody who resists technology. I never knew the Luddites was a labor movement. I probably should have known that, but the Luddites was a group of people. I thought they were just technophobes. I thought they were afraid of technology, right? Because that's the way it is. Like, no. They were protecting jobs in mills, and that's why they destroyed the new generation of machines. So, yes, these changes can come with social unrest. Yes, if you're directly affected by it, it's bad. But the two-part message is, one, a lot of these jobs we're not going to miss, right? People in politics talk about coal miners, and as far as I know, most coal miners work really hard so their kids don't have to be coal miners, right? They're not trying to pass this job down for 5 generations. They're saying this is a really hard job. I didn't like it. I can get black lung disease. I can have mind failures. Like, I work hard so my kid doesn't have to be a coal miner. That's kind of the American dream, right? I work hard as a cleaner so my kid doesn't have to be a cleaner. So I think, yes, we will shed some of these jobs, but a lot of some jobs go up, some go out, right? Like, there was a pretty funny moment. I had to listen to a Joe Rogan episode, which I've never done before, but I watched Jensen Huang on Joe Rogan, and he tried to use an argument that Jeffrey Hinton had made unsuccessfully. And Jeffrey Hinton had said, basically, in 2016, I predicted that we should stop training new radiologists because AI could read images better. And now, a decade later, he was right and wrong, right? AI can read images better, but there's more radiologists than ever. And that's an argument of pushing jobs up. Turns out image reading is not all they do. Jensen tried to apply this to Uber drivers, saying, it turns out that driving is not all drivers do. And I'm like, well, this is going to be interesting. And then he's like, they also do security, right? And I'm like, oh my, only a billionaire thinks drivers are security guards, right? Which, when you're a billionaire, they are. But it was funny. It's like, no, Jensen, I think you got this one wrong. That drivers just drive. I don't think that's a job that gets pushed up. So that's some of the stuff we're talking about there.
So clearly, the workplace is changing. And
Yep.
We are all on Team Human here on this podcast, in this community. And so we think more about the new opportunities. We think less about the elevator operators or the doffers, and more about, what it means to be on the right side of innovation. What are your thoughts on some of the new opportunities that AI is going to create?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of them, right? I mean, AI engineers, data scientists, automation engineers. I mean, social media managers will continue, SEO managers. All these things are tools, right? Like, AEO is replacing SEO, but you have to have somebody to do AEO, and you can automate a lot of it, right? I think there's a lot of jobs, just like prompt engineering is a thing right now, right? A lot of analytical jobs just get pushed up a level. If your job was really like data entry, you probably already got wiped out already, right? In the last several rounds of automations, right? There used to be people whose job was data entry. They took forms and typed stuff in, on terminals. So I think we're going to create new jobs. I don't know what they're all going to be, but in general, I think humans are we're busy little bees. We're productive people. We like to be productive. We'll find a way to be more productive. We always have. And there's always an argument of fear that we're going to, end up in Logan's Run, right? Which is one of my favorite sci-fi movies, where the good news is you don't have to do anything all day. The bad news is they kill you at 30, right? Like, when you hit 30, you go to carousel and get killed by the system. But the first 30 years are great. So nobody works, nobody does everything because everything's automated. I used to joke that Palantir was Logan's Run because they all wore the black coats, and they were all under 30 and all wore black coats. But now they've been around for a while. They got older. But anyway, I'm confident. I can't give you a full long list of them, but I don't think we're going to. One of my favorite words I found in this thing was LL Lemmings. That I don't think we all end up, useless LL Lemmings being driven by algorithms. And there is another interesting paper in there called "We Won't Be Missed." The darkest piece I saw on this was "We Won't Be Missed," which is, first, a great title, and second, a pretty interesting paper. Like when the new generation of work happens, we won't be missed. I even included a rebuttal to it. But Dave Kellogg is a person. Call it just optimism, but I think we're really good. We don't miss the bad jobs. We create new ones, and people stay busy, and we're not going to live in Logan's Run.
And yet, this trope is becoming common about, pitting, humans against machines, and if it bleeds, it leads, and that certainly bleeds. So one of your predictions is about trust, and anyway, I don't want to unpack it. I want you to do that. But talk about your thoughts on 2026 in terms of humans and AI and the future of trust.
Yeah, so I think, and this one's really written. One of the things I do on post is I start out pretty macro, so that's why I do politics. I never do politics on Kellblog, but once a year in this post, because I want to start really macro and then kind of zoom in. And as part of that zoom, I'm a marketing person by nature, so I like to write about marketing. And obviously, AI for marketing is scary first because SEO is dying, right? Well, web traffic is dying because of AI front running, right? And I love the notion of front running. I use the word a lot, but I want to talk about why I like it so much. First, to me, it's a Wall Street term, right? That's what ultra high frequency traders do. They front run, right? Like if I can react faster than you, I see there's an order coming in for a buy and there's an order coming in for a sale, and I can jump in the middle of it and be above your sell price and be above your buy price and make some money. Right. So that's called front running a trade. And I think the search engines for years have front run content producers. They didn't originally, right? The original Google did not front run. They just provided links and you would press. And that's why the business model worked for publishers, because they drove traffic, right? But every year they front ran a little more. Right, featured snippets was a huge piece of front running, right? Where they take the content off your site and present it directly with the results. Or people also ask is a form of front running, right? So anything that gets you your answer without you going to my site is front running the content producer. Right. And as a content producer myself, it's a very hard situation to be in because Kellblog traffic is down 20% year over year. I don't like it, but I do want to be included when they front run, right? I want them to say, well, Dave Kellogg thinks this in the ChatGPT answer. So you end up with this kind of, as a friend of mine once said, engineering gave us two choices, left barrel or right barrel. This is a product manager. And I feel like, Google gives you two choices, left barrel or right barrel. Like, okay, do you want to get front run and not get the traffic, or do you want to get not front run and not get the traffic, i.e. we'll talk about someone else's blog and their definition of the rule of 40, not yours, right? So it just seems like there's two bad options. But to me, one of the biggest things AI is doing is front running. So it's crushing traffic. The other thing it's doing is making it free to generate slop, right? So there's just more and more crap out there. And somehow, Dan, I don't know if this is true, but I feel like I can feel it. I don't actually, this is the most unscientific thing I'll ever say, but I feel like at least a lot of the time when I'm reading AI generated copy, I know. And literally, like I was reviewing a paper for a friend of mine, and I read it and I didn't like it and it was bad. And I'm like, this was written with AI, wasn't it? And he's like, yeah, it was. You busted me. I don't know how it works. I don't know. You have a view on that? We'll come back in a minute. But that is, so AI slop is out there. I think we can still tell, but it jams up marketing, right? Because we can't use gated assets for content anymore, right? Like, one of my favorite quotes as a marketer is somebody said that, the email inbox is going to be earned media. And that's a wild quote if you think about it, right? Because earned media used to mean PR. Like you had to earn the story. And then if you got yourself a story in the Wall Street Journal, a lot of people did a lot of work to make that happen. And now getting someone to open your email is going to be earned media. And it's true, right? Because when I've got AI, once again, filtering my emails for me and summarizing them, right? I got to earn the breakthrough, right? I've got to earn somebody's trust to open my email, to sign up for my newsletter, right? To give somebody my email address, to have them believe what I say on my website, that my case studies are true, my testimonials are true, to believe the reviews about me. There's an area that's increasingly gained, right? I go to G2 and read reviews. Are they real? Right? I don't know. Can I trust these things? So I actually feel like AI is increasing the importance of trust because the world is just going to be flooded with all this garbage. So like, who can I trust? And to me, it takes you full circle all the way back to branding. Like, I could trust this company. People Rain puts out good content, right? Or whatever company I'm working with, Vic AI puts out good content, or TechWolf puts out good content. On mine. So to me, that's why I said trust is the antidote. That was the name of this prediction. It was the only way I could see navigating this very scary minefield is through trust.
Let's take that one step further. Indulge me in this thought experiment. So the dawn of AI did not introduce the notion of false data, information that is not trustworthy. It amplified it. Maybe, just maybe, the fact that we're having these conversations more frequently about not trusting the authenticity of content, of everything that you consume, and then forcing all content that we consume to demonstrate that that it is of high integrity, that it is authentic. Maybe that's a win for humanity, that we've been forced to revisit the definition of trust.
Yeah, I think in some ways it is good because the problem has gotten so out of control that you can't ignore it anymore, right? When you could ignore it, you could get misled. Like, I'll never forget the first time Facebook amplified, not just shared, but amplified. It showed me a story in some B-tier publication with a credible name. It was something about Hillary Clinton. I can't remember what she supposedly did, but it was just straight up wrong. It was a lie. And it was amplified in my feed. I never asked for it. Huh?
Pizzagate.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. And it put it there. And I'm like, oh my God, it's not like one of my friends posted it and I saw it because I was following my friend. That would be on him or her. It was the algorithm chose to pick this story out of a sea of content and amplify it and show it to me. And that was the first time I ever said, this is again for older readers, but gosh, RSS seems pretty good by comparison, right? Because back before we had social media algorithm-driven feeds, you would sign up for feeds directly from sources using a protocol called RSS. And the original web portals, you would literally have panels and say, I want to connect to the Wall Street Journal or the San Francisco Chronicle or Jambase, or like you'd connect all these things and build your own kind of custom paper. And you know what? That model doesn't look so bad compared to, I don't know if you've been on X lately, but like in my mind, if I take one step off the safe path on X, like you're in just a world of hatred and ad hominem attacks, and like it's crazy. And in that world, I don't trust just about anything. It still works. I still use it. I swore off it for 6 months, but now I go back and because you can't find stuff you can't find elsewhere. Right? Direct contact with people writing, like the Dwarkesh podcast, just one example of something I found. Amazing podcast. I never would have found it through other channels, right? So you can still get value out of these things, but man, trust matters so much.
Yeah, certainly not something that will be resolved in 2026.
Yeah. But I think in the end, I'm going to be an optimist with you on this. I think it's good that we've made trust such a problem that we need to decide who we invite back into our living room, like Walter Cronkite, right? We trusted Walter Cronkite to bring us the news, and he, in my opinion, earned and deserved that trust. We're going to have to go back to that era, which I think is a good thing, because now we kind of just trusted anybody, and with all the slop out there and propaganda, I think we're going to have to, trust will get more important. So I think brands should want their communications to be trusted.
It's always darkest just before it gets light.
Crosby, Stills, and Nash lyric, long time gone.
Rick. A lot of your best content consistently year after year is advice for startups. And I guess one thing I want to tease out of this year's treatise is how metrics and expectations are changing. So there will always be room for exceptional companies, startups or otherwise. But you talk about, I think I'm paraphrasing, but the rule of 60 is the new rule of 40. Maybe just unpack your thoughts on metrics and what can startups do to succeed in 2026?
Yeah, so this one, once again, it was responded by a tweet I found on Twitter, a kind of fin twit, but this guy posted a tweet that goes, looks like we're paying 5 times sales for software. Mr. Valentine has set the price. And he didn't have the link, but I recognize the movie. It was Coming to America, where they're doing a scam on buying pork bellies and Billy Ray Valentine. So I thought it was hilarious because for a while we've been paying 10 or 15 times software. And this guy's just saying, hey, the market has settled into 5 times software. And then the second thing I did was observe that, 5 times software, 5 times sales with 33% EBITDA margins is 15 times EBITDA, which is a kind of rule of thumb for PE, right? That's a decent EBITDA multiple. If a PE vendor is buying a software company on an EBITDA basis, right, that 15x is a decent valuation. 60 to 20 was my rule of thumb. Things are softer now, so just call it 15. And the reason I brought all that up was I think the other thing another guy tweeted was that stocks trade on first they trade on TAM, then they trade on revenue multiples, then gross profit multiples, then EBITDA multiples, then cash flow multiples. These this giant SaaS you are here. And I think it's important for those of us who live through these cycles that it does change. There was a time. Look, ironically, back in enterprise on-prem days, I thought 3 to 5x sales was a reasonable software multiple. And then all of a sudden for SaaS, it got up to 10, 20, sometimes in the private markets, 50x. Some of that was justified by the recurringness of the revenue. That, a dollar once is worth a lot less than a dollar every year. And then we had the whole NRR craze. Well, it's not a dollar every year. It's 1.2 to the N, right? So it's growing with an NRR of 120%. So multiples got really high. And then we had the growth at all costs era, right? Where it was just grow. And the rule of 40 emerged around 2015, if I recall, as a metric to kind of bring sanity back and say, wait a minute, the place we are in the cycle right now no longer rewards growth at all cost. We want to reward a sane balance of growth and profit. That's the rule of 40. And it's basically rule of 40 score equals some growth metric plus some profit metric. Pick your favorite. And the purpose of this prediction was to say, well, one, just an observation, I increasingly hear PE people talk about rule of 60, and that should catch your attention, right? Because even rule of 40 was like, okay, I could be growing at 20% and have 20% margins, therefore I'd be a, quote, rule of 40 company. And now, to be rule of 60, you need to either figure out how to drive 20% growth with 40% EBITDA margins, right? Which is no easy task in my mind, right? Because you're taking so much profit out. But to me, what it meant more than anything is that PE buyers lost a little bit of belief in growth, that they don't think you're going to grow that fast, so you better be printing money. And somewhere in the post, I have PE guy. I don't know if you've seen PE guy on Instagram, but he's a guy who satirizes PE people.
I discovered it through your post.
Oh, okay.
Oh my gosh.
He's fantastic.
Satire. Yeah.
He is fantastic. Apparently he's like a personal trainer in Connecticut and he got exposed to all these PE people. But one of his things, he always says 2 words, substantial. Well, there's a substantial amount. He's 3 things: decent, substantial, and then due to my role, I'm able to afford this. Due to my role, and those are his go-to lines. But one of them was, they're printing. They're just printing. They're just printing money. And that's what rule of 60 is. You're just printing. You're growing 20% and pumping 40% EBITDA out. And I think the reason I bring all this up is one of the points I think we touched on earlier. And Jason Lemkin did a post about this recently that said there's like an uncomfortable truth we all need to face. And that's exactly the case I'm worried about, which is if you're a $20 million company growing at 10% with 15 or 20% EBITDA margins, you literally have no future. And getting yourself to rule of 40 isn't going to be enough, because rule of 40, you might have got sold for 3 to 5 times the revenues, but that's not going to happen anymore because the PE's buyers' tastes have changed. So they're not coming to the rescue. So either, and I think in his case, go build a really strong, like burn the ships and bet on AI, which I've seen a couple founders do, or financialize, to use the current buzzword, and just say, we're going to further financialize this thing and it's going to print. It's going to look just like what PE guy wants to buy, which in one of my favorite skits was veterinary ophthalmology clinics that they were doing a roll-up on. They're just printing.
Or size.
Yep.
Classic. By the way, if you're driving or on a treadmill or something, and these references are arcane, go to the when you stop, you can safely go to the show notes and pull up the Kellblog annual predictions post. A lot of this will make more sense. Dave, one of the things I love about our conversations is you straddle both the entrepreneur side as well as the investor side through your role at Balderton, and you get some interesting insights, predictions about you call it fee culture, but maybe unpack your thoughts on how the venture model is changing.
Yeah, this one's interesting to me. I'll start with a story that's embedded in the post, but literally the first time I heard someone refer to venture capital as part of financial services, I was like, what? Because I grew up in New York. I worked on Wall Street for a while. Like, I know what financial services is. Like I know what Wall Street guys are. And I've always thought culturally that, by the way, Silicon Valley and the Peninsula and Wall Street had similar vibe. It wasn't true in the East Bay. In San Francisco, East Bay, Oakland, the kind of East Bay software mafia, PeopleSoft, Workday, back in the day, Commerce One, Sybase, right? They were a little bit softer, but on the peninsula, it was as hard as Wall Street in my mind, always. But the first time I ever heard somebody call venture capitalists financial services, I was like, "You're crazy! They're tech. They're not financial services, right? They help tech people build businesses. Oh yeah, they provide money, but they're not financial services." Like literally, I was completely, totally wrong, right? They absolutely are financial services, but I never saw it that way. Because they were such, to me, just part of the tech ecosystem. That they're like the guys who provided the gas for the tech ecosystem. But they were us. They were tech people, right? They weren't Wall Street types. They weren't just kind of Wharton MBAs driving numbers. And so that was my first realization that, wait a minute, VCs are really in financial services. Then the whole growth category took off, where VC itself changed, right? As soon as you couldn't go public at 100 million and you needed to wait till you're 700 million, well, all the capital you needed between 100 million and 700 million is now going to be done through private markets. And that became kind of growth funds or growth PE or growth venture, whatever you want to call it. But it's no longer early stage when you're a $100 billion company. We can't call that early stage. The public markets used to do that. Like when I was at Business Objects, we went public at, believe it or not, 30 million in trailing revenue. Right. So if we needed capital as a $100 billion company, we did an offering. We didn't go do a private placement using the private markets. So VC has been changing a lot. And that was one big change. And that was definitely kind of more the financialization of VC, because the growth people, the early round people, in an insulting way, called the growth people dumb money. Right, that was when that first started. Like, oh, they're dumb money. We're an A-round people. We're smart money. We make the hard calls of finding entrepreneurs in garages and betting on them to build businesses. And then when it's a $100 billion business, these guys come and pile in at high valuations. Right, so that was the growth change. And by the way, those growth investments are big. Like, they might be a $100 billion investment. So the fee on that one investment would be $2 million a year using the so-called 2 and 20 carry model, the 2 and 20, fund model, 2% annual fee and committed capital plus 20% carry. So those are some of the changes that happened already. But what provoked this prediction was just watching the funds get bigger and bigger. That, Andreessen just announced a suite of funds together. I think it was around 6 or 8 funds worth $15 billion, right? $15 billion. Take 2% of $15 billion. That's $300 million. You have a $300 million business, it recurring, right, for 10 years at least, just by raising that amount of capital, right? And how many general partners do you have in these things? It's certainly bigger than the old days when there was a handful. But even if you had, I don't know, call it 30, which is higher than the Post does, but 300 million divided by 30 is still $10 million a year per general partner on just the fees alone. So, and what it made me realize two things. One, I view it as part of the continued, and it's going to sound stupid, financialization of VC, because you can argue it was always financial. So you might want to call it the PEization, right? So it's becoming more like PE. Because look, back in the day in VC, that number, that 30 million number we just talked about, was more like 3 million, 2 or 3 million. And you could live a very nice life. You could buy a house in Atherton or Woodside. You could buy a place in Tahoe, but you're not buying a private jet on $2 million a year. You're not buying a ranch in Montana on $2 million a year. Sorry, bad news. So VCs, the incentive was, if I want the ranch in Montana and the jet to fly to it, I need carry, right? I need a cut of the outcome, which means I need the outcomes to work. Right? Like I need to take $250 million fund and turn it into $750 million. So I get 20% of $500 million, which is $100 million, split it across 5 partners. We each get 20. And this is all very back of the envelope. It's excluding carry to staff and other people. But put it this way, you get enough to buy a ranch in Montana, right? You can't buy a whole jet, but you could certainly buy a big chunk on Netflix, net jet, sorry. Using that kind of money. So to me, the incentive just changed, because now just on fees alone, you could make more than a VC did 25 years ago on fees plus carry. And I think that's worth mentioning. That's all. And that's why I brought it up, because we still call it all venture capital today, but it's these people running the mega funds in particular. I mean, there's really three types of VC, I'm going to argue. There's early stage, and I call these business partners. In general, these are people who can help you build your business. They don't always help, as we both know, but they can. They have the potential. Then you've got growth money, where they're going to help, but through best practices. Maybe they got an ops team, right? It's not their personal experience as entrepreneurs they're bringing. They're bringing some MBAs with spreadsheets and templates and reusable plays, and that's good. It's all helpful stuff. That's growth. And there's this new thing, I don't know what to call it, but I'm just going to call it the mega funds, where they're just deploying massive amounts of money, and they're looking more and more like PE firms. And if you think those people are going to help you build your business, I don't think so. They'll help in one way precisely. They're going to give you money, right? But they're not going to help you in the other ways. So that's what I was trying to talk about, and I just think, yeah, that's all. To use PE guy's word, this is substantial. Okay, this is a substantial change in the industry, because it means people are going to want to deploy. Put it this way: if I've got $5 billion burning a hole in my wallet, I'm going to find a way to deploy it. Right? If you're going to make me $20 million a year to deploy $5 billion, I'll find a way to do it. I'm going to do it in bigger chunks, and I think it's going to be more foie gras startups, right, where they just force feed capital into them. Unlike the geese, this requires the founder as an accomplice, let's be clear. And a little bit of a damn the torpedoes attitude, which is, as I always like to say, you don't have to make $20 million a year for that many years before you're rich. Some might even argue one, right? But you don't need to make 20 million, after 5 years, you've made gross $100 million. So, and I just think these things will shape and change how VCs work.
Hard to argue against that. I mean, that's less a prediction and more just a theme.
Yeah, I think it's happening, right? Yeah. And the question is, how much is it going to happen?
Yeah,
I think
right.
AI is the perfect match for this model because it needs lots of capital, right? So personally, I think the solution is companies should go public sooner, and the public market should handle all this. I don't exactly know why that isn't the case right now, but that would solve a lot of the problems I worry about.
That's a separate conversation.
Yeah,
state of the public markets. And you know what, Dave? Until this becomes an acquired style format, a 4-hour conversation, I got to cut this one off because I have respect for your time and the listeners' time. But one last question for you that's important. 7,644 words. Sum up for the audience. What surprised you most in the last year?
Well, this one's not going to be great to talk about, but we'll try and stay on the safe side of it. Frankly, the VCs and Silicon Valley leaders took overt political positions. That surprised me because for years, I viewed Silicon Valley. Look, Santa Clara County, where is the heart of Silicon Valley, it's a blue county. That's just a statement of fact. Your average voter is Democrat. Whereas the VCs were all kind of quiet libertarians. Right? Like you'd see a copy of Atlas Shrugged on their desk. I remember once one of my sales VPs gave an award ceremony and she brought the awards were in a bag that said, "Who is John Galt?" printed on the side of it. So you had this kind of passive aggressive libertarianism and Ayn Randianism. But that was it. That was kind of the net politics of Silicon Valley. It was the voters, the people who live here are blue. The leaders are probably these quiet libertarians, but don't talk about it much. Maybe once in a while, somebody will host a fundraiser, but it's just not something brought up in polite company. That was very much the ethos I was grown up with. And just to see that completely change was shocking. That was, and I think it's unwise. I'll just tell you why I think it's unwise, Dan. We this red-blue thing, we all think America is 50-50, red-blue, and it's actually 33 times 3, red, blue, gray. There's a shockingly large number of independents out there, and therefore, you're not just potentially irritating half the audience when you take a position on either red or blue, you're potentially irritating 2/3. And I think people need to be cognizant of that. And that's why I was surprised VCs would do it, because if I were a founder, I mean, look, there's a whole thing that, DOD money has been ARPANET. DOD backed the creation of the internet, right? DARPANET was a Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPANET, right? The birth child of the internet. So the tide of money, and what was it called? Oh my God, I work with them. The CIA VC. Very quiet. What's the name of that CIA? Oh, my God. Let me get it. But the CIA has had a VC firm in Silicon Valley for a long time. IQ2, InQtel. right? In-Q-Tel was out here, but this was all very quiet. Like they didn't invest in text mining companies or algorithm-driven companies, or we talked to them at MarkLogic because we did a lot of Intel work. So you had the military here in a very quiet way, and you had the political climate we discussed, but that was it. And for the most part, Silicon Valley said, Washington, leave me alone. Like, just let us go build cool stuff. Leave us alone. And that whole thing, if you look at the number one increase in spend on like marketing related things, it's actually lobbying amongst these companies. Lobbying spend is up like 5x, 10x, right? So that all this, and maybe you could argue it's just maturation of the industry. It got big, so it mattered, so they had to do it. I had a lobbying firm, MarkLogic, just I had enough federal business that we hired a firm to help us do some lobbying for some of our projects. I'm not opposed to lobbying, but I'd say the more overt politics, particularly by VCs, I think is myopic, because if I'm founding a company, I want some alignment with the people who are helping me build it.
Something tells me a year from now, we're going to have a lot to discuss on that topic.
I think we will. I think we will. Well, it just changed this week, right, Dan? This is the first time that the tone has started to shift the other way. And it was interesting to watch. Because for the most part, I would just say to generalize, the red people have been speaking up. Andreessen Horowitz is on the record about years ago being single-issue voters, American dynamism. They spoke up first. Most of the blue people didn't say anything. Reid Hoffman, like once in a while, would chirp something. And I think this week, literally, that changed.
Yeah. I said that was the last question, but we're not letting you ride off into the sunset without maybe a tribute to a hero that we lost recently, great Bobby Weir. I'll share with you one of my favorite quotes. I won't sing it like John Mayer did at the tribute in San Francisco, but then I'd like to hear from you. Kind of maybe you wrote that great Kellblog post as a tribute, maybe your most poignant memory of the dead. From Ripple, there is a road, no simple highway between the dawn and the dark of night. And if you go, no one may follow. That path is for your steps alone. Always gives me the chills. Dave, ride us into the sunset. What's your most poignant dead memory?
So I got two things I want to say on this one. So I was a big Deadhead, and obviously the Dead have a lot of business lessons as well. So go read my blog, just do Grateful Dead business lessons. Co-founder of HubSpot, Brian Halligan, is also a big Deadhead. He wrote a book on them. So like there's just like open source. Like these guys did open source way before any of us did in software, right? There's just ideas. They have business model disruption. So first, there's plenty of good business lessons from the Dead. To me, actually, I'll just skip my favorite Dead song. So they sang Ripple, as you highlighted at Bob's ceremony. My personal favorite kind of tribute song is either Broke Down Palace, right, Fare Thee Well, or actually Black Muddy River. And for a long time, the Dead had an internet archive, and it was actually my post that I always felt that the Black Muddy River was the River Styx. I took 6 years of Latin in high school. I was very familiar with Chiron, the boatman, and you had to, if you died, they'd bury you with a coin in your hand so you could pay him to get across. He was the ferryman who would take you across the River Styx to the underworld. And I always felt Black Muddy River was about the River Styx. Black Muddy River was about the River Styx. And it's a great song. I think it was the last song Jerry sang, by the way, which is crazy. So that's probably my most poignant memory, is just watching the Black Muddy River at, I don't think he did it in San Francisco, but the last time I saw it at the Sphere, it was very powerful.
Beautiful. Formative, beautiful. Wasn't a 7,644 word treatise, but it was really well written.
Thanks. Thanks for doing this. I love this tradition and appreciate being able to do this with you every year.
I told you it's part of my biorhythm, and gosh, you brought it as you always do. Good hanging out, my friend. Thanks for doing this.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Take care.
You bet. All right. Well, that's all the time we have for this week on AI and the future of work. As always, I'm your host, Dan Turchin from People Rain. And of course, we're back next week with another fascinating guest.
Yo, it's the end of the show. Time to power it down. AI's the sis, but humans wear the crown. Team Human in the house, got the vibe so clever. Dan Turchin from People Rain, making us better.
We learned about AI for humans. We're ready to conquer the future. That's all for now.
See you next time.